On May 22, 2011, Joplin began like a normal Sunday. People went to church. Families ate together. Businesses opened for the evening. Thousands of people gathered for a high school graduation ceremony. At 5:34 in the afternoon, a tornado touched down west of the city. By 6:12, it was gone. In those 38 minutes, a violent column of air crossed the Joplin metropolitan area, cut through neighborhoods, damaged hospitals and schools, destroyed businesses, and changed the lives of tens of thousands of people. The tornado was rated EF5, the highest category on the enhanced Fujita scale, with estimated winds greater than 200 miles per hour. The National Weather Service recorded 158 direct fatalities and more than 1,000 injuries. NIST's broader disaster assessment lists 161 total fatalities. But the most important question is not simply how powerful the tornado was. Joplin received a warning. So why did so many people remain in its path? This is the story of the storm, the warning, the structures that failed, the decisions people made in minutes of confusion, and the lessons that continue to shape tornado safety today. A tornado does not appear out of nowhere. It is assembled by the atmosphere from ingredients that can exist across hundreds of miles. On that Sunday afternoon, warm and humid air pooled across the southern plains and Midwest. A powerful storm system and strong winds higher in the atmosphere created an environment capable of supporting rotating thunderstorms. The key ingredient was wind shear, wind changing speed and direction with height. Near the ground, air flowed from one direction. Higher up, it moved faster and from another. That difference created horizontal rotation in the atmosphere. A thunderstorm updraft can tilt that rotation upright, concentrating it into a rotating region inside the storm. That region is called a mesocyclone. Most storms with rotation do not produce a tornado. Tornado formation requires the circulation near the ground to tighten and connect with the storm's rotating updraft. The final transition can happen quickly, sometimes faster than people realize they are looking at a dangerous storm. In Joplin, the storm was not merely a dark cloud moving across the horizon. It was a supercell, a large, organized thunderstorm with a rotating updraft and enough energy to sustain itself. The city was about to experience the difference between a severe thunderstorm and a catastrophe. At approximately 5:34 p.m. local time, the tornado touched down west of Joplin. At first, the circulation did not look like the image many people imagine when they hear the word tornado. There was no guaranteed clean black funnel against a bright sky. Rain wrapped around parts of the circulation. Visibility was poor. The storm grew wider as it moved eastward. That matters because people often use the visible funnel as their personal danger meter. If they cannot see a funnel, they assume the threat is distant or uncertain. But a tornado's wind field can extend beyond the condensation funnel. Rain, dust, and debris can obscure the circulation. At night, or inside a building, the tornado may be invisible until the sound and pressure arrive. The Joplin tornado intensified as it entered the city. Its damage path eventually stretched about 6 miles through the densely populated metropolitan area. More than 50,000 people lived in the affected community. This was no longer a storm to watch from a porch or parking lot. It was a fast-moving, rain-obscured wind field, moving toward homes, businesses, schools, and critical facilities. The Joplin tornado was rated EF5 on the enhanced Fujita scale. That rating is often misunderstood.
The EF scale is not a direct measurement from a wind gauge placed inside the tornado. Extreme tornadoes are dangerous places for instruments, and the strongest winds are rarely measured directly. Instead, trained survey teams examine damage indicators, structures, trees, power systems, and other evidence, and estimate the wind range capable of producing that damage. For an EF5 rating, the estimated winds exceed 200 miles per hour. At that intensity, even well-built structures can fail. Roofs can be separated from walls. Walls can collapse. Debris can become airborne and act like missiles. Vehicles can be thrown or rolled. The difference between a survivable space and an exposed space can be a few interior walls or a properly designed shelter. The tornado did not destroy every part of Joplin equally. Its strongest winds varied across the circulation. Some buildings remained standing beside others that were heavily damaged or destroyed. That unevenness can make disaster look random. But engineers can find patterns. Construction quality, connections between walls and roofs, shelter availability, debris impact, and the angle of the wind all influence how a building performs. After Joplin, the National Institute of Standards and Technology sent engineers into the damaged area. Their investigation examined not only structural performance, but also emergency communications and the question of how communities can protect people when buildings themselves cannot resist the strongest winds. The investigation would become one of the most detailed tornado studies in American history. The Joplin tornado was not an unwarned event. According to NIST's later review, the National Weather Service warning for the city was issued approximately 17 minutes before the tornado struck, giving residents several minutes more lead time than the national average at that time. The city's sirens sounded twice. Yet warnings do not save lives automatically. A warning has to be heard, understood, believed, and converted into action. NIST researchers later interviewed 140 survivors to understand what happened between the warning and the impact. They found a complicated communication environment. Joplin sirens were tested weekly, which meant many residents heard them as a familiar routine. Nationally, tornado warnings also had a high false alarm rate. Some people had learned, through experience, that a siren did not always mean a tornado would strike their location. A separate storm north of the city had already prompted an earlier warning and siren activation. When sirens sounded again, some residents were unsure whether this was another test, an all clear, or a new and more serious threat. The sirens were designed primarily for people outdoors. They were never meant to be the only warning channel for people inside homes, stores, hospitals, or vehicles. Some people looked outside for visual confirmation, but heavy rain obscured the tornado. Local television coverage focused attention on the northern storm. The information existed, but it did not reach every person in a form they trusted or understood. This is one of the hardest lessons of Joplin. A warning can be technically correct and still fail as a public message.
As the tornado moved through Joplin, it crossed the places where daily life was concentrated. Homes, stores, schools, roads, medical facilities, neighborhoods that had been built for ordinary weather. The tornado damaged 553 business structures and nearly 7,500 residential structures, according to NIST. More than 3,000 residences were heavily damaged or completely destroyed. A major hospital was damaged. Critical facilities were affected. Power failed. Roads filled with debris. Familiar landmarks disappeared in minutes. For survivors, the experience was not one single moment. It was a sequence of sounds, darkness, pressure, impact, and disorientation. The tornado moved through the city for roughly 38 minutes, but the memory of those minutes would last for years. When the tornado passed, the danger did not end. Buildings were unstable. Glass and metal covered roads. Utility lines were down. Gas leaks and fires were possible. Flooded or blocked streets made movement difficult. Thousands of people needed medical care, shelter, information, or help finding family members.
The first night became a test of emergency response and of neighbors helping neighbors. Residents, first responders, medical workers, volunteers, churches, businesses, and organizations from across the country converged on Joplin. The recovery was not measured in days. It required years of rebuilding homes, businesses, schools, roads, utilities, and trust. The physical city could be reconstructed with lumber, concrete, steel, and wiring. The emotional city was harder to measure. But recovery also created a new form of resilience. The disaster produced a body of knowledge that could be applied far beyond Missouri. NIST's investigation produced 16 recommendations focused on buildings, shelters, and emergency communications. The central idea was practical. In the strongest tornadoes, it may be economically unrealistic to make every ordinary building tornado-proof. But communities can improve the places where people take refuge. NIST recommended stronger national performance standards for tornado-resistant design, especially for critical facilities such as hospitals. It recommended more tornado shelters in schools, hospitals, large retail buildings, multifamily housing, and other places where large numbers of people gather. And it recommended clearer, more consistent emergency communications, shared among weather offices, emergency managers, news organizations, and local governments. A warning is not successful because it exists in a database. It is successful when a person understands the danger and reaches shelter before the wind arrives. If a tornado watch is issued, conditions are favorable for tornadoes. Identify your shelter before the storm becomes urgent. If a tornado warning is issued, take action immediately. Do not wait to see the funnel. In a house, go to a basement if one is available. If there is no basement, move to a small interior room on the lowest floor, away from windows and exterior walls. Close the door. Cover your head and neck with your arms, a mattress, or sturdy padding. In a mobile home, leave for a sturdy shelter before the storm arrives. Mobile homes are especially vulnerable to violent winds. In a school, store, workplace, or public building, follow the building's emergency plan and move to its designated interior shelter area. Do not stop to open or close windows. Opening windows does not make a tornado safer. If you are driving, your priority is to reach a sturdy building. Do not use a highway overpass as a shelter. If no shelter is immediately available, follow current official local guidance and protect your head and neck as much as possible. After the storm, avoid damaged buildings, downed power lines, gas leaks, and flooded roads. Call emergency services for life-threatening emergencies. Do not enter unstable structures simply to retrieve belongings. The Joplin tornado lasted less than an hour. Its consequences lasted much longer. It became the deadliest single tornado in the United States since official records began in 1950. It became one of the costliest. It became a case study in meteorology, engineering, emergency communication, and community resilience. But Joplin should not be remembered only as a number on a chart. It was a city on a Sunday evening. It was a graduation, a movie, a workplace, a hospital, a home. And it was people who survived, rescued one another, treated the injured, searched the rubble, built, and demanded better protection for the future. When the warning comes, do not wait for visual proof. Go low, go inside, stay away from windows, protect your head and neck and lung. The wound may be invisible. The decision to shelter should be immediate. Tornado watch, ready. Tornado warning, take action. Follow your local National Weather Service and emergency management guidance.